Imagine being hailed as a hero for saving a life, but deep down, knowing that the same people applauding you judged you just days ago, based only on your appearance. At the most anticipated event of the night, Leo Harris is about to break his silence and reveal a truth no one is ready to hear. What will he expose? What will the consequences be? Stay tuned, because the revelation is closer than you think.
Leo Harris stood on the grand stage inside the towering flagship store of Jennings Exclusive, his hands gripping the microphone as his heart pounded in his chest. The applause from the well-dressed crowd still echoed in his ears, but he wasn't basking in their admiration. Instead, his mind raced, battling an internal storm that threatened to explode. On his left, Gregory Jennings, the man whose store this was, beamed at him with pride. Just moments ago, Jennings had publicly praised Leo for his heroism, saving his daughter, Rebecca, from a devastating fire a year ago. It was supposed to be a celebration, an honor bestowed on Leo for risking his life. But the tension in Leo's shoulders told another story. Across the room, Paul and Carter, two familiar faces, stood near the entryway. Leo's jaw clenched at the sight of them. The two white security guards who had humiliated him just days before now looked uneasy, their confident postures faltering under his gaze. The crowd was still applauding, unaware of the truth. This was supposed to be a moment of glory. Leo could hear Gregory's voice echoing in his mind. "Thank you, Leo, for saving my daughter's life. You're a hero to us all." A hero. Leo could barely contain the surge of frustration building within him. Was he a hero when he was dressed in casual clothes, standing outside this same store, being blocked from entering? Was he a hero when Paul and Carter had stopped him, sneered at him, and implied that someone like him didn't belong in a place like this? He took a deep breath, knowing what had to come next. Gregory's smile was fading, sensing that something was wrong. The room began to quiet as the guests, dressed in their finest clothes, waited for Leo to speak. He had a choice. He could let it slide, allow the moment to pass, accept the award, and return to his life. He could walk away, keep the peace, and preserve his public image. But how could he? His hand tightened on the microphone, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The memory of that day in the store, the humiliation, the dismissive looks, the way they'd shoved him back through the door, it was all too fresh. Leo's voice broke the silence. "Thank you for this recognition, Mr. Jennings," he began, glancing at Gregory before returning his gaze to the audience. "It's an honor to be here today. But before I accept anything, there's something I need to address." A murmur rippled through the crowd, confusion spreading. Paul and Carter exchanged nervous glances, their unease growing. "I came to this store just a few days ago," Leo continued, his voice steady, but his heart thundered in his chest. "I wasn't here to save anyone's life this time. I wasn't here as the hero you see before you now. I was just Leo Harris, off duty, trying to buy something for my wife." He saw the recognition flash in the eyes of the security guards. Paul shifted uncomfortably, while Carter's eyes darted between Leo and the exit. "When I arrived at this store, dressed casually after a long shift, I was met with suspicion. Not by the staff you see here tonight, but by your security," Leo said, his gaze locking onto Paul and Carter. "I was stopped. Judged. And ultimately, I was pushed out of this store because someone decided I didn't belong." The room fell silent, shock rippling through the crowd. Gregory's smile faded completely, his face paling as the gravity of Leo's words sank in. "I was told I didn't fit the type of customer this store serves," Leo continued, his voice growing stronger as he pushed through the weight of his emotions. "This was just days before I stood here as the hero you're honoring. Days before I was recognized for saving a life, because at that moment, in their eyes, I wasn't a hero. I was just another black man who didn't belong." A gasp escaped from one of the guests. Gregory's gaze shifted uneasily between Leo and his security team. Rebecca, sitting beside her father, looked confused, her wide eyes locked on Leo as if trying to make sense of the revelation. Leo took a deep breath. He had said what needed to be said. Now, the question was, what would happen next? The crowd waited, holding their collective breath, all eyes on Gregory. I had no idea, Gregory finally stammered, stepping forward. Leo, I'm so sorry. I didn't know, that's the problem, Leo said softly, cutting him off, but without hostility. You didn't know. And that's exactly why it needs to be said. I'm not here to shame anyone, Mr. Jennings, but I can't accept this recognition while your store allows this kind of behavior to go unchecked. Paul, sensing his job slipping away, stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. I didn't mean, he began, but Leo silenced him with a look. This isn't about one or two people, Leo continued, turning his attention back to the audience. This is about a system, a mindset, that makes assumptions about people based on how they look, what they wear, and the color of their skin. It's bigger than a single incident, and it's something that needs to change. Gregory, visibly shaken, nodded slowly. You're right. It does. Leo lowered the microphone, the room still buzzing with tension. His message had been delivered. Now, it was up to Gregory and everyone in the room to decide what would come next. The elegant hall of Jennings Exclusive was now a hive of discontent. Whispers filled the space as guests exchanged bewildered glances and hushed conversations. Leo Harris had left the stage, his stance resolute, yet the air around him felt thick with unease. Gregory Jennings' face was a mask of conflict. Leo, he said, his voice wavering as he approached Leo, let's talk in my office. Leo nodded, his expression hard but composed. He followed Gregory through the labyrinth of polished marble and opulent displays. The office, a sanctuary of mahogany and glass, provided a stark contrast to the chaos outside. As the door closed behind them, Gregory's demeanor shifted from defensive to introspective. I had no idea, Gregory said, sinking into his leather chair. I'm deeply sorry. We've always prided ourselves on being inclusive, but I see now we've failed. Leo took a seat across from him, his posture rigid. It's not just about what you personally knew or didn't know. It's about a pattern of behavior that's systemic. Gregory ran a hand through his thinning hair, frustration evident. I'll address the security team immediately. But this goes beyond my store, doesn't it? Leo leaned forward, his voice steady but carrying the weight of his experiences. Yes, it does. This is a symptom of a larger problem. When I was rejected at the door, it wasn't just an individual act of discrimination. It was a reflection of a broader societal issue. A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Rebecca, clutching a small, stuffed animal. Her wide eyes met Leo's with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Dad, she said timidly, what's wrong with Mr. Harris? Gregory's face softened as he looked at his daughter. Nothing, sweetheart. Mr. Harris is just sharing something important with us. Rebecca's gaze lingered on Leo. I remember you, she said quietly. You saved me. Leo smiled, though his eyes remained sad. Yes, I did. And I'm glad you're okay. Rebecca seemed to sense the heaviness in the room and retreated to the doorway, leaving Leo and Gregory to their conversation. Gregory's gaze was intense. What can I do to make this right? What can Jennings Exclusive do to fix this? Leo took a deep breath, weighing his words carefully. It's not just about fixing a single incident. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued and respected. It starts with training, but it goes deeper. It's about changing attitudes and fostering real inclusivity. Gregory nodded thoughtfully. I understand. I'll initiate a review of our policies and training. But this will take time. What happens next? Leo stood, his resolve firm. I'll keep speaking out. This isn't just about one store or one incident. It's about raising awareness and pushing for systemic change. Gregory extended his hand, a gesture of earnest commitment. Thank you, Leo, for your bravery and your honesty. Leo shook his hand, a silent acknowledgement of the challenge ahead. I hope this leads to real change, Mr. Jennings. As Leo left the office, the tension from earlier had not dissipated entirely. The crowd outside had shifted, some were still whispering, others were leaving in small groups, their expressions reflecting a mix of surprise and contemplation. Outside the store, Leo took a moment to breathe in the cool night air. The event had exposed cracks in the facade of inclusivity that Jennings Exclusive had projected. Yet, the real work lay ahead. The evening had highlighted the systemic issues that persisted beyond the walls of the store. As he drove home, the weight of his actions pressed heavily on him. He had faced the immediate conflict, but knew that his journey was far from over. At home, as Leo shared the evening's events with his wife, Sarah, her concern was palpable. She listened intently, her eyes filled with both pride and worry. "You did the right thing," Sarah said, her voice soft but firm. "But what happens next? How do you deal with the fallout?" Leo took her hand, grateful for her support. "I'm not sure yet. But I know I can't stop now. This is bigger than any one moment or event." They both understood the significance of the night's revelations. The real challenge lay in turning this public confrontation into meaningful action and systemic change. Leo lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. The confrontation at Jennings Exclusive had been just the beginning. The fight against systemic racism and discrimination required more than a single speech. It demanded ongoing effort, persistent advocacy, and deep-seated change. The path ahead was uncertain, but Leo was determined to walk it. The ripples from that night's revelations were just beginning to spread, and Leo knew that the road to genuine inclusivity and equality was a long one. Leo's resolve hardened as he left the office, the cool night air providing a temporary respite from the heated emotions of the evening. Yet, the uncertainty of what lay ahead loomed over him. His drive home was filled with deep contemplation about how to leverage this moment for real, lasting change. The next morning, Leo woke to a flurry of media attention. News outlets were abuzz with the incident at Jennings Exclusive, and Leo found himself at the center of a storm. He was interviewed by various reporters, each question probing deeper into the systemic issues he had highlighted. Leo answered with a calm, measured tone, emphasizing the need for continued dialogue and action. The media exposure was a double-edged sword. It increased awareness but also invited scrutiny and pressure. At the heart of the media frenzy, Leo was determined to channel this attention into productive avenues. He organized a press conference where he would address the broader implications of the incident. His speech was aimed at sparking a conversation on systemic racism and the need for substantive change. Meanwhile, Gregory Jennings had been busy implementing immediate measures in response to Leo's call for action. He had reached out to diversity consultants and began the process of revising company policies. However, the challenge of changing ingrained attitudes and behaviors was not something that could be addressed overnight. The day of the press conference arrived, and Leo stood before a crowd of journalists, community leaders, and activists. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Leo began his address by recounting the events at Jennings Exclusive and the personal significance of his experience. "I want to be clear," Leo said, his voice resonating through the microphone, "this incident is not an isolated one. It's a reflection of a larger issue that affects countless individuals every day. The goal is not to single out Jennings Exclusive, but to highlight a systemic problem that needs to be addressed across all sectors of society." He spoke about the importance of accountability, not just from corporations, but from individuals and institutions as well. The media coverage of the conference was extensive, amplifying Leo's message to a broader audience. The press conference was a pivotal moment, turning the personal conflict into a public discourse about racial equality and systemic reform. In the days that followed, Leo worked closely with activists and community leaders to draft a set of actionable recommendations for businesses and institutions. They focused on measures such as mandatory diversity training, regular audits of workplace practices, and creating channels for employees to report discrimination. The initial response from the community was positive. Many praised Leo for his courage and the clarity of his message. However, there were also detractors, those who viewed his efforts as disruptive or unwarranted. Leo understood that change often faced resistance, but he remained undeterred. One evening, Leo met with several local activists at a community center. They gathered around a table cluttered with papers and coffee cups, discussing strategies for furthering their cause. The conversation was passionate, each participant bringing their own experiences and perspectives to the table. "We need to make sure this isn't just a momentary outburst," one activist, Maria, said. "It's about creating a lasting impact." Leo nodded in agreement. "It's about building momentum and holding people accountable. We need to keep the pressure on and ensure that the conversation continues." As the meeting wrapped up, Leo felt a renewed sense of purpose. The dialogue he was fostering was beginning to take shape, evolving from a single incident into a broader movement for change. At home, Sarah noticed the strain in Leo's demeanor. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her concern evident. "It's been overwhelming," Leo admitted. "The pressure is immense, and the road ahead is uncertain. But I believe in what we're doing. I believe it can lead to real change." Sarah squeezed his hand reassuringly. "You're doing something important. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And I'm here with you every step of the way." That night, Leo reflected on the journey so far. The confrontation at Jennings Exclusive had sparked a vital conversation, but it was only the beginning. The path to systemic change was complex and fraught with challenges. Yet, Leo was committed to navigating it with determination and hope. The fight for equality was far from over, but Leo was resolute. With every step, he aimed to build a more inclusive world, one where everyone's voice could be heard and valued. The journey was ongoing, and the road ahead was long, but Leo knew that change was within reach if they continued to strive for it. The initial success of the press conference brought a wave of both support and backlash. As Leo settled into his new role as a vocal advocate for systemic change, he was met with unexpected resistance. The backlash came from various quarters, some from within the business community, others from individuals who felt threatened by the scrutiny. Leo was taken aback by the intensity of the opposition. He had anticipated resistance, but the personal attacks and attempts to discredit his character were more vicious than he had expected. Anonymous letters arrived at his home, some filled with hate speech, others with veiled threats. Social media was ablaze with criticisms and accusations aimed at Leo, with detractors questioning his motives and painting him as an opportunist rather than a genuine advocate for change. In addition to the online hostility, Leo began receiving unwelcome visitors. One evening, as he was reviewing documents at his kitchen table, a loud knock echoed through the house. Opening the door, he found a man standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers. The man was well-dressed, but his eyes betrayed a hidden agenda. "I'm here to deliver a message," the man said, placing the flowers on the doorstep. "Some people think it's best if you back off." Leo's heart raced as he closed the door, feeling a mix of anger and fear. It was clear that the stakes had risen. He shared the incident with Sarah, who was visibly concerned. "We need to be cautious," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's affecting us both." Leo agreed, understanding the gravity of the situation. He decided to increase security measures at home and reported the threats to the authorities. Despite the precautions, the psychological toll was significant. The fear and uncertainty were constant companions, threatening to overshadow the progress he had made. Despite the backlash, Leo continued his advocacy. He participated in community forums and panel discussions, using these platforms to emphasize the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity. His messages resonated with many, but there was a growing sense of isolation as the attacks became more personal and the support less visible. In an attempt to bridge the divide, Leo reached out to Gregory Jennings. He sought to discuss the next steps for Jennings Exclusive and to understand how Gregory was navigating the backlash from within his company. They met at a neutral location, a small cafe known for its quiet atmosphere. Gregory looked weary, his face lined with stress. "This has been a difficult time for all of us," he said, sipping his coffee. "The pressure to maintain the momentum while dealing with resistance is challenging." Leo nodded. "I understand. It's a tough position, but we need to focus on the long-term goals. It's not just about one company or one person, it's about creating a systemic change. Gregory agreed. I've been working with my team to address the concerns raised and to push for genuine reform. It's not easy, but we're committed. Their conversation was candid, and Leo appreciated Gregory's willingness to engage despite the difficulties. It was a small but significant step towards collaboration and mutual understanding. As Leo left the cafe, he reflected on the complexity of the situation. The resistance he faced was disheartening, but it underscored the importance of the work he was doing. He needed to remain steadfast in his commitment, even as the opposition grew fiercer. Back at home, Sarah continued to support Leo, but the strain was evident in their relationship. Their conversations became more strained as they both grappled with the pressures of the situation. Leo felt the weight of the battle on his shoulders, knowing that his efforts were causing ripples beyond his control. One evening, Leo found solace in a quiet walk through the park. The tranquility of the surroundings provided a brief respite from the chaos. As he strolled, he considered the broader implications of his work. The personal attacks and backlash were unsettling, but they were also a reminder of the deep-seated issues that needed to be addressed. Leo's determination to push forward remained unwavering. He was committed to navigating the turbulent waters of advocacy, even when the path was fraught with obstacles. The journey was challenging, but Leo was resolved to see it through, driven by the belief that change was not only necessary but possible. The backlash against Leo intensified, but he refused to be deterred. His commitment to his cause remained strong, and he continued to push for systemic change despite the mounting pressure. The situation took a surprising turn when Leo received an anonymous tip about a key piece of evidence that could shift the narrative. The tip led Leo to an old friend, Marco Silva, a private investigator with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths. Marco had been following a trail of information that suggested deeper corruption within Jennings Exclusive. Intrigued and hopeful, Leo reached out to Marco, arranging a meeting at a discreet location. In a dimly lit office, Marco laid out the evidence he had gathered. "What I've found is troubling," Marco said, spreading out documents and photographs. "There's a pattern of misconduct that goes beyond just your case. It involves several high-profile individuals and questionable practices within the company." Leo's eyes widened as he reviewed the material. The evidence implicated key executives and even suggested a cover-up of some of the incidents involving racial discrimination. The documents included emails, financial records, and testimonies that painted a grim picture of systemic issues within Jennings Exclusive. "This is huge," Leo said, absorbing the gravity of the situation. "If this information is accurate, it could have a significant impact." Marco nodded. "The challenge now is to verify the authenticity of these documents and to decide how to use this information. It's a risky move, but it could be the key to exposing the truth." Leo faced a crucial decision, whether to use the evidence to challenge Jennings Exclusive publicly or to work behind the scenes to leverage the information for reform. He knew that going public could escalate the situation further, but it could also be the catalyst for real change. After much deliberation, Leo decided to collaborate with Marco to verify the information and build a stronger case. They began investigating further, interviewing key witnesses and cross-referencing the evidence. Their investigation revealed even more startling details, including attempts by the company to silence dissenting voices. As they delved deeper, Leo found himself at odds with some of his allies. Some supporters urged him to go public with the evidence, believing it would force a more immediate response. Others, like Sarah, were concerned about the potential backlash and the safety of their family. Leo's internal conflict grew as he weighed the potential consequences of each course of action. He felt the weight of responsibility not only for his own safety but for the broader impact on the movement he was leading. Meanwhile, Gregory Jennings became increasingly aware of the investigation's progress. Despite the efforts to maintain a facade of normalcy, it was clear that the mounting pressure was taking a toll on him. He reached out to Leo for a private meeting, seeking to discuss the situation. At their meeting, Gregory appeared distressed. "I've been informed about the investigation," he said, his voice tense. "This is spiraling out of control. I want to cooperate and address the issues, but I need to know what you're planning." Leo was taken aback by Gregory's openness. "We're working to verify the information and to find a path forward. I want to ensure that any actions taken are based on solid evidence and that they lead to meaningful change." Gregory nodded, showing a glimmer of understanding. "I appreciate your approach. It's a difficult situation, and I'm committed to addressing the problems within the company. Let's work together to find a resolution." Their conversation marked a turning point. Gregory's willingness to cooperate provided Leo with a renewed sense of hope. It was a sign that even within the complexities of the situation, there was room for collaboration and progress. As Leo and Marco continued their investigation, they prepared to confront the broader implications of their findings. The journey was far from over, but Leo's resolve remained strong. The pursuit of truth and justice was fraught with challenges, but the prospect of exposing systemic corruption offered a glimmer of hope for meaningful change. The stakes had never been higher, and Leo knew that the next steps would be crucial in shaping the outcome of their efforts. With a clear focus on the goal, he prepared for the inevitable confrontation and the pursuit of justice that lay ahead. The investigation had reached a critical juncture, and Leo felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He and Marco had worked tirelessly to corroborate their findings, and the evidence was now irrefutable. They had gathered enough proof to make a compelling case against Jennings exclusive. With the truth in hand, it was time to confront the company and bring the issues to light. Leo decided to schedule a high-stakes press conference. The decision was risky, but he believed it was the best way to ensure that the issues would not be ignored. The conference was set to take place at a prominent downtown location, and the media was abuzz with anticipation. As the day of the press conference approached, Leo prepared his speech meticulously. He knew that this was his opportunity to expose the corruption within Jennings exclusive and to demand accountability. He rehearsed his speech, making sure that every word would resonate with both the press and the public. On the morning of the press conference, Leo arrived at the venue early, accompanied by Marco and a few trusted allies. The atmosphere was electric, and the media thronged around, eager for the event to begin. Leo could feel the tension in the air, knowing that the outcome of this conference could have far-reaching consequences. When the time came, Leo stepped up to the podium, facing a sea of cameras and reporters. He took a deep breath and began his speech. His voice was steady and resolute as he outlined the evidence of corruption within Jennings exclusive. He presented documents, shared testimonies, and exposed the company's efforts to cover up the truth. The reaction from the crowd was immediate and intense. Gasps and murmurs spread through the audience as the details of the scandal were revealed. The media coverage was swift, with headlines blasting across news outlets and social media. The press conference had made waves, and the world was now aware of the corruption within Jennings exclusive. Gregory Jennings, who had been present at the press conference as a gesture of transparency, looked visibly shaken. Leo noticed the tension in Gregory's posture and the worry etched on his face. After the conference, Leo approached Gregory, who was waiting in a private room. "Mr. Jennings, we need to talk," Leo said firmly. "The evidence is out there now, and we need to address it." Gregory nodded, his expression troubled. "I understand. This is bigger than I anticipated. We need to take action to rectify the situation and demonstrate our commitment to change." As they discussed the next steps, it became clear that Gregory was genuinely invested in making amends. He proposed a series of immediate actions, including a public apology, internal reforms, and a commitment to addressing the systemic issues within the company. Leo agreed to work with Gregory, but he was cautious. He wanted to ensure that these promises were more than just empty words. They needed to be backed by concrete actions and a genuine commitment to change. Meanwhile, the public reaction to the revelations was mixed. Some praised Leo for his bravery and commitment to justice, while others criticized the timing and the method of his approach. The controversy added another layer of complexity to the situation, and Leo had to navigate the shifting tides of public opinion. As the media frenzy continued, Leo found himself in the midst of a larger debate about accountability and systemic reform. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but he remained focused on the goal of achieving meaningful change. The final confrontation had been a pivotal moment in the story, but it was only the beginning of the journey toward resolution. Leo's efforts had exposed the truth, but the real challenge now was ensuring that the promises made would lead to genuine reform. With the press conference behind him and the world watching, Leo prepared for the next steps. The path to justice was long and uncertain, but he was determined to see it through. The fight for accountability was far from over, and Leo knew that the challenges ahead would require courage, perseverance, and unwavering resolve. In the wake of the press conference, the atmosphere around Leo grew increasingly tense. The media's intense scrutiny meant that every move he made was under the microscope. Gregory Jennings and his company faced a torrent of criticism, and the calls for action grew louder. It was clear that the scandal had not only tarnished the reputation of Jennings Exclusive, but also ignited a broader conversation about corporate accountability. Leo's personal life also felt the strain. The pressure from the media and the public took a toll on his relationships and his mental well-being. He felt isolated, even as he was surrounded by supporters. His friends and colleagues noticed the change, and Marco, in particular, grew concerned about Leo's well-being. Despite the mounting pressure, Leo remained resolute. He knew that the real test was not just in exposing the corruption but in ensuring that meaningful changes were implemented. Gregory Jennings had promised reforms, but Leo wanted to make sure these promises would be fulfilled. To that end, Leo and Marco set up a series of meetings with Gregory to monitor the progress of the promised reforms. They worked closely with legal advisors, reform experts, and advocacy groups to ensure that the changes were comprehensive and effective. During one of these meetings, Gregory presented a detailed plan outlining the steps Jennings Exclusive would take to address the issues raised. The plan included structural changes within the company, improved oversight mechanisms, and a commitment to social responsibility initiatives. Gregory's sincerity was evident, but Leo was cautious. He demanded regular updates and tangible results to ensure that the reforms were not just superficial. The public reaction continued to evolve. While some people remained skeptical, others began to appreciate the effort to address the issues. The narrative surrounding the scandal shifted from one of sensationalism to one of reform and accountability. This transition helped to restore some of Leo's credibility, but he knew that the journey was far from over. Leo's personal struggles were also evident in his interactions with his family and friends. His work had consumed much of his time and energy, leaving little room for anything else. His relationship with his sister, who had always been a pillar of support, became strained as she struggled to understand the sacrifices he was making. One evening, Leo visited his sister's home for a family dinner. The atmosphere was tense, and the conversation was strained. His sister, Emily, confronted him about the impact of his work on their family life. She expressed her concern for his well-being and urged him to consider the cost of his mission. Leo felt a pang of guilt but was also resolute in his belief that the work he was doing was crucial. "Emily, I know this is hard, but I can't turn back now," Leo said earnestly. "This is bigger than any one person, and I have to see it through." Emily's eyes were filled with tears, but she nodded in understanding. "I just want you to be careful and remember that you're not alone in this." Despite the emotional toll, Leo pushed forward. The reform process at Jennings Exclusive began to show signs of progress, with some visible changes implemented within the company. Leo remained vigilant, monitoring the situation closely and advocating for continued improvements. As the story of Jennings Exclusive's transformation unfolded, Leo found himself at a crossroads. The initial confrontation had led to significant changes, but the true measure of success would be in the lasting impact of those changes. The road to reform was arduous, and Leo had to navigate the complexities of balancing his personal and professional life. The chapter concluded with Leo standing at the edge of a new beginning. The immediate challenges had been met, but the journey toward true justice and reform was ongoing. Leo's resolve was unwavering, but he knew that the path ahead would require continued effort, resilience, and a steadfast commitment to the cause. The months following the press conference brought about a new phase in Leo's life. As the reforms at Jennings Exclusive began to take shape, the atmosphere around the company transformed from one of scandal to one of hopeful progress. The media coverage shifted from sensationalism to a focus on the positive changes being implemented. The company's reputation, while still recovering, was slowly being restored. Leo continued to work closely with Gregory Jennings and the reform teams. The changes within the company were not always smooth. There were internal conflicts and resistance from some employees who were uncomfortable with the new policies. However, Gregory's commitment to the reforms, combined with Leo's persistent advocacy, began to overcome these hurdles. One evening, Leo received an unexpected invitation. Gregory wanted to meet with him privately. Curiosity and apprehension mingled as Leo entered Gregory's office. The room was adorned with symbols of the company's success, a stark contrast to the recent controversies. Gregory greeted Leo with a mixture of gratitude and humility. "Leo," Gregory began, "I want to personally thank you for your relentless dedication to this cause. Your courage and commitment have made a significant difference." Leo nodded, acknowledging Gregory's words, but remaining focused. "The real test will be whether these reforms lead to lasting change. I'll be watching closely." Gregory smiled faintly and then handed Leo a file. "I wanted you to be the first to see this. It's a report detailing the progress we've made and the future steps we plan to take. I hope it shows you that we're serious about making real changes." Leo reviewed the report carefully. The document outlined several key achievements: improvements in workplace diversity, enhanced oversight measures, and new initiatives supporting community engagement. While there were still areas needing work, the report showed substantial progress. The meeting ended on a positive note, but Leo knew that the work was not done. He continued to advocate for accountability and transparency, ensuring that the changes were not only implemented but also sustained. Leo's role evolved from a watchdog to a collaborator, working with Jennings Exclusive to help shape its future. As the company's transformation became more evident, Leo's personal life began to regain a sense of balance. His relationship with his sister Emily improved as she saw the positive impact of his work and understood the importance of his mission. They found common ground and supported each other through the challenges. One day, Leo attended a community event organized by Jennings Exclusive. The event was a celebration of the company's new initiatives and included speeches, performances, and exhibitions of community projects funded by the company. Seeing the tangible results of his efforts and the positive impact on the community provided Leo with a sense of fulfillment. During the event, Gregory approached Leo with a smile. "I wanted to thank you again for everything you've done. Your dedication has inspired many of us here at Jennings Exclusive to strive for better." Leo shook Gregory's hand. "The real thanks should go to the people who've been working tirelessly to make these changes happen. It's been a collective effort." As the event drew to a close, Leo took a moment to reflect on the journey. The road had been long and challenging, but the progress made was a testament to the power of perseverance and the impact of standing up for what is right. In the final scenes of the chapter, Leo walked away from the event with a sense of closure and optimism. The changes at Jennings Exclusive were a significant step forward, but Leo remained vigilant, knowing that true progress required ongoing effort and vigilance. The chapter concluded with Leo standing on a city street, looking out at the skyline. The city had witnessed a transformation, both within Jennings Exclusive and in the broader community. Leo's resolve had been tested, but he had emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. The story of Leo's journey was one of courage, accountability, and the power of individual action to drive meaningful change. As he walked into the sunset, Leo knew that while this chapter had closed, the journey for justice and reform continued. The aftermath of Leo's efforts left an indelible mark on both Jennings Exclusive and the wider community. As the company continued to adapt to its new policies, it became a symbol of how corporate responsibility and community engagement could intersect meaningfully. However, the story wasn't over. Leo's experience had opened his eyes to broader issues beyond the immediate case of Jennings exclusive. The challenges faced and the solutions implemented had inspired him to look deeper into systemic issues affecting various industries and communities. One day, Leo received a mysterious phone call. The voice on the other end was familiar but unexpected. It was Veronica Morris, the journalist who had originally covered the scandal at Jennings exclusive. She had been following Leo's work closely and had uncovered new information that hinted at widespread, unresolved issues in other sectors. "Leo, I think you need to see this," Veronica said. "I've come across some alarming patterns in corporate practices that suggest the problems at Jennings exclusive are not isolated. There's a larger story here, and I believe it's one that needs to be told." Intrigued, Leo agreed to meet with Veronica. They convened at a cafe, away from the prying eyes of the media and the corporate world. Veronica presented Leo with a dossier filled with documents, reports, and interviews pointing to unethical practices in several high-profile companies. As Leo sifted through the information, he realized that the scope of the issues was even more significant than he had anticipated. Corruption, racial discrimination, and exploitation were pervasive across multiple industries. It was clear that the fight for justice was far from over. Veronica proposed a collaborative effort to expose these new findings. "We've made progress with Jennings exclusive, but this is bigger than just one company. We need to shine a light on these broader issues and hold more powerful entities accountable." Leo mulled over the proposal. His recent experience had taught him the value of persistence and the importance of bringing about systemic change. He was ready to take on this new challenge, understanding that it would require even more dedication and resilience. "I'm in," Leo finally said. "Let's uncover the truth and push for reform on a larger scale. If we can make a difference at Jennings exclusive, we can certainly take on these bigger issues." The chapter concluded with Leo and Veronica planning their next steps. They set out to investigate the newly discovered evidence and to strategize their approach. The anticipation of a new, more extensive battle against corporate malfeasance filled the air. As Leo looked out the window of the cafe, he saw the city bustling with activity. It was a city full of stories waiting to be uncovered and issues that needed addressing. Leo's resolve was stronger than ever, and he was ready to dive into the next chapter of his journey. The story of Leo's quest for justice had transformed him from a single advocate to a key player in a larger movement for change. The final scene of the chapter hinted at the beginning of a new, challenging adventure, setting the stage for future stories and continued efforts towards systemic reform.